What is up, guys? So some huge news that happened with AMD today. The stock price is up almost 7% after hours. And, there's a lot of really good news articles that are going around, regards to their movements with China, them dealing with Intel, and, their new analyst upgrade that seems to be the kind of the rallying point for all of these things kind of coming together. And a lot of people are, really focusing on AMD right now, and they're really trying to figure out, it's been growing for, it's almost up over 100% over the past few months. What exactly is AMD? Where is it going to stop, and how long can this continue? So I'm going to give my take on that. So, if you guys have been either, just started following AMD, if you're kind of, up to date on everything that's going on, I'm going to be giving my opinion on all the current news that's going on with it. If you guys haven't really checked out AMD, and you want to learn more about the company, make sure you check out these two videos beforehand, because those videos are going to be way more in depth than right now. I'm just going to be going over the news. So if you guys are new to my channel, I'm Dan. This is Millennial Investing. I go over stocks and tech and everything that you could possibly think of. So if you guys are into that, make sure to stick around, hit that like button, and let's jump right into what happened with AMD. So AMD, the biggest thing everybody's talking about was the analyst upgrade, but I'm actually not going to start with that. I'm going to be going into what is going on with China. And to me, that's kind of the most important thing, and what I think kind of validates AMD's price movement over the past few weeks. So AMD has been really focused on gaining market share in China. And that's mainly because, kind of like what I referenced in this video with Micron, is that China is really getting stingy with their semiconductor line. And they're trying to do a lot more things internally rather than always importing a bunch of different semiconductors from America. And so AMD took a very strategic approach. So AMD has partnerships with Hygon and Zhongshan Subar. Those are two companies that focus on different areas of semiconductors in China. And rather than AMD going directly and selling AMD's products in China, they are, they have large stakes in these two companies, and they're allowing them to use their patents, so they get a fee each time they sell a chip. So when you look at that, AMD is pretty much knowing that China wants Chinese companies making other chips, so they're just selling them and providing them, capital to produce those chips, so that way China can produce semiconductors that are up to par with AMD's chips, and AMD, while they won't get the full profit from that, they're allowed to just pump out product after product. And this is significantly pulling market share away from Intel, especially because a lot of the data center revenue is really getting ramped up in China. And so you see data center growth, it's exploded in America and Europe, and now it's really starting to take footing in China. And so now that these are Chinese companies that can use AMD's products, a lot of Chinese companies are really starting to dump money into them. And so AMD is kind of, doing an indirect approach with China. Like, they have their hand in China, but they're not physically there, so the Chinese government's okay with it. So that's great news that's come out, and right now they're producing their, I believe, 86X CPUs based off their EPYC line with Hygon. And so that's going to allow, just every Chinese company that wants to switch, generally either off of Intel, because Intel has about a 90% stake over there right now, they're going to give a switch to, a Chinese company using AMD tech, and that's just going to explode for one, Chinese people thinking that, okay, they're more, that nationalistic footing, knowing that they're buying Chinese processors, and the fact that AMD, is right now beating Intel in the market. It has better tech, so really good note. And, there are a couple of other things going on with PC gaming. AMD is actually focusing an entire unit on making specialized modular pieces for gaming PCs in China. And that's kind of exploding, because if you look at, say, esports and, the gaming community in the, the Pacific region, especially with Japan, Korea, and China, all of those countries have an immense esport following. And so the fact that AMD is kind of taking the first step into really focusing on that clientele, above Intel and NVIDIA right now, allows them to just kind of steal market share and be the first ones there. So that way it's harder for Intel and NVIDIA to really penetrate that once they start making those specialized components for, cheap rigs that people can still play games at, that now they don't have to go to internet cafes as often and things like that. So that's kind of what's going on with China. Again, my other videos will go more of a breakdown of what's been going on the past few weeks, but these were the things that were just kind of released over the past few days and kind of updated. And so now let's get into the upgrade. So Rosenblatt had a meeting with AMD, and as of yesterday, he now brought up that he was so impressed with what AMD is doing how their revenues are going, how the company is going as a whole, and what he sees happening to, or what they see happening to Intel and NVIDIA, and what kind of market share AMD is going to have, in the future. And so they have actually changed their price target from $27 to $30 for AMD. And so at the time of him releasing that, it was a 40 to 44% increase from the current share price. And so shares kind of rallied today off of that. Along with this great news, that was just the major catalyst, was that upgrade. I don't really take that as, like the end all be all, because like one, it's one analyst that already had, an overzealous, price target compared to most of the other analysts. So the fact that he's bumping it up a few extra dollars, but the average, the average analyst is still covering around like 16 or so, 16 to 19. I definitely don't think that it's like, everything's, smooth sailing from here on out. And I definitely wouldn't say take an analyst's review over, your own personal research. But, that it is the market. And so whenever an analyst has that such of a bullish review on a company, a lot of people want to get onto it. And then people that, they've been thinking about AMD for a while, and now that's when everybody's coming into right now. And so that's why you see the volume was up, on average today. And, a lot of, possible institutional money was being poured in, and a lot of retail investors were throwing money at it just because they were probably looking for the, should I go in it? Should I stay in out of it? And then the second that the analyst, increased their price target to that much of an upside, that was just an excuse that people wanted to throw money at it. And so another thing to keep in mind, it's kind of a good and it's kind of a neutral news, but could possibly be good news, is that short volume for AMD is about 25% of the float. Now, so that means that there are a large amount of people or institutions that bank on AMD going down, or they have been banking on AMD going down for a while now. And so kind of back when I said in my first video months ago, is that AMD is extremely volatile. So people have been kind of swing trading it and, riding up the, buying it and shorting it back and forth, every like 20% or so. And this short volume has kind of stayed constant since it started its latest ascend. And that's because a lot of people are still, kind of bearish on where AMD is going to be going, and that Intel is going to come back and smack them, and their share price is going to plummet once Intel kind of asserts its dominance again, like it has time and time before. However, on the flip side, if AMD is able to keep going and show like all this positive momentum, eventually shorts, when you short a stock, you generally do it with margin, and eventually you get a margin call. If you can't cover the margin call, you have to cover, and you do that, all of that short equity turns into, buying it, because now they have to cover all their positions. And that can cause an immense price movement. It happened, there's an analyst on Seeking Alpha that talked about it, and how the last time that it was at this high was when AMD was about $2 a share. And due to direct to the short conversion, the stock rose 30% off of just that conversion, and then continued to go up, another 300%. So that is, something to keep an eye on. Like, there's obviously a lot of pessimism going on with AMD right now. Ironically, even though it's been moving up almost 100%, but that is something really important to keep an eye on and see what is doing with that short volume. It's kind of the same thing that's happened with Tesla. When it's extremely volatile stock, the second it breaks its current pattern, it starts to go in one direction, you have another surge, kind of like a second wind, because of all this recovering. So something to keep an eye on. Obviously, do not take that as any concrete, oh, this is great to invest, but that's just something you want to think about if you see any more giant surges in price. And now, Intel and NVIDIA, AMD's direct competitors. So AMD going off after they spoke to Rosenblatt. Rosenblatt kind of came out and said in their review was that they assume that Intel is 1.5 years behind AMD with their current processors, and that's true because Intel is 1.5 years behind AMD, and that's kind of true because Intel is focused on trying to get to that 7 nanometer level, or 7 from 10 nanometer level. However, they're not able to do it, and they're not even expecting to be able to be done with it until the second half of 2019. So there's about 1.5 years leeway for AMD to kind of just rack up market share, which is really great because as data centers are growing right now, AMD is the one who's able to first go to market, especially in the developing economies, and really grab a hold of all those. And again, like I said in my previous videos, once you switch to a data center and you're, everything's running off of one architecture, it is a lot of work and a lot of money to switch, manufacturers. Because it's one thing if, you're using an EPYC line and then a new one comes out a couple years later and you switch to it, all you have to do is plug in the new component and you're fine. If it's a whole new system, you need to get more motherboards, and the motherboards for certain servers are almost as expensive as the CPU for the server. And so it's almost doubling the cost, theoretically, for that transition. And a lot of systems, once they get used to, working with specific programming, it creates a big headache on the back end for, changing what processor they're using. So I definitely think that that's going to be more sticky type of a customer base than, like, say, the average laptop or anything like that people are already disposing of every couple of years. I definitely think data centers are a big market for CPUs, so the fact that they're 1.5 years ahead of Intel on that matter is, in my opinion, just fabulous for AMD. And then for NVIDIA, I didn't fully agree with this, so they're revamping their GPU line and they're more focusing on directly onto gaming, and they're trying to make their chipset as small as possible. And NVIDIA, just kind of beefed up their cards, and they're kind of huge. And they were saying that NVIDIA's, 6 months away from catching up. And I gotta say, I don't really agree with that. I personally think NVIDIA is still top dog in that space, and I definitely think dollar to dollar performance, NVIDIA is still the best GPU maker in the world. So I wouldn't really agree with this. That's what people are saying, and that's something that, a lot of people are pumping at AMD for, that they said that, oh, it's going to overtake NVIDIA and it's going to start to eat away a lot of market share. I personally don't see that. NVIDIA just has, the best cards on the market right now, and I totally think that that's going to stay for a while. NVIDIA has always had it time and time again over the past few decades. Way back in the day, it was kind of a hit or miss between what CPU was better, but hands down, NVIDIA has always been better on graphics. So I definitely do not agree with this bold statement. And I think that's just kind of fluff that's going on right now. But it is kind of amazing with what AMD is doing right now. So for those of you that, you already know this and you just kind of want to get my opinion, or you just want to hear, extra thoughts about it, I personally don't really care about what's going on right now. I said in my last video, I'm currently selling my AMD shares. I've been slowly selling them because I anticipate, it's going to keep ramping up, but it's getting pretty close to my personal price target. Mainly because I think it'll definitely go past what my price target is. Like, do not get me wrong. I do think that AMD is going to continue to go, probably for the rest of the year. And, they could hit, $25, $30, $35 possibly. But to me, that's just when AMD becomes overvalued, and I just don't want to be a part of it. And so, I've been selling off my shares, so it was great. I sold some today. Not fully out, but I'm definitely, going to be out probably soon over the next, say, month or so. Because, there's a lot of coverage in AMD right now. Everybody is slowly switching to that optimistic standpoint. Back when I bought them, everybody was, saying like, okay, short AMD down to like $5 a share. And, everything that I kind of talked about in my first video over here, everything's come to fruition. Like, I'm not expecting much more out of AMD right now. And so I'm okay with that. Like, I'm happy. I didn't think it would happen this quickly. Like, I was expecting, it to take a year or two for AMD to really start to cement its foothold. But, between Intel with the Spectre issue, people needing to switch already, and then when people needed that upgrade, Intel just wasn't ready for what AMD came out with. So it was just, a couple of things that really fell in AMD's lap, and now they're accumulating a lot of market share. And their strategy for taking market share away from Intel and China is really smart. So definitely love the company. Love what they're doing. However, I do think that, it's nearing the people are thinking too much is going to come out of this. The fact that AMD has gone up, right now AMD is like about 20% of what Intel's market cap is. Not 20%. They're about, I think they're about $20 billion, and Intel, is about 200 to 250. And I definitely see AMD, over time becoming, 30% of Intel's current market share is right now. But I don't see that happening overnight, and I don't see that happening in 1 year. Like, again, a lot of people that are switching it's great, but I guarantee you there are a lot more that aren't switching yet because, they probably just bought them a couple of years ago, and they're trying to really ride that out because RAM is really expensive right now. Every possible semiconductor right now, every possible semiconductor that you could buy is pretty expensive right now. And so a lot of companies probably just don't want to make the upgrade. So while I do think they're going to take a lot of the new markets coming in, or the new companies coming into the market, I definitely think the majority of people are going to stick with Intel regardless of this. And because I also believe in Intel in the long run as well, Intel has always proven itself to be the better company out of the two. And every time that AMD, you know, catches a break and becomes slightly better than Intel, Intel will generally, you know, dominate them once they're done. And when you look at the amount of power per nanometer that Intel is trying to pack into their new line of CPUs, the main reason why they haven't been able to make the, you know, the 7 nanometer yet, if they're able to perfect that, especially even within a year, AMD needs a lot of catching up to do. If assuming they stay at their 7 nanometer level, they need to do a lot of catching up to do if Intel is able to do what they plan on doing. So I don't know, I might even buy Intel. You know, if AMD shoots the moon and Intel starts to drop because of it, you know, I might even buy Intel, because Intel, you know, everybody's thinking that Intel's out of the race right now, but you know, they're still a great company. They pay a dividend, unlike, you know, the majority of other semiconductors. And, you know, as of right now, yeah, they're going to lose some market share, but they still have close to a 90% market share. So at the end of all this, they're going to have like, what, an 80% market share? like I definitely think Intel is still going to be top dog, especially and for the foreseeable future, Intel is going to be the top dog. But it's a little bit, it's a little interesting, you know, the price earnings ratio right now with AMD, because they just became profitable, so it's a bit skewed, you know, is sitting at like, or I'm sorry, the forward on it is sitting at like about 30, and the forward on Intel is sitting around like 13. So, like, I get AMD's growing right now, but you really got to take a step back and be like, okay, how long are they going to keep growing? And really, how much of this is actually going to impact Intel? So Intel might become the more undervalued one soon, assuming, you know, giant price movements like this happen. And also, I'm not a big fan of holding on to tech companies once everybody starts to move in. You know, it's the same thing that happened with like Micron. You know, I made a couple of posts about it, that I was selling some of my shares way back when, because the price went up from $45 to like 62 in the matter of a week and a half. And that's fishy. You know, you know, any company moves up that quickly, you know, off of not a lot of news, and, you know, everything just starts ramping up, like, you know, a little bit different because, like, yeah, you know, analysts will do it and that can sometimes be a catalyst, but fundamentally wise, not much has changed in the companies. And I see a lot of what happened to Micron happening to AMD right now. And so that's why I'm selling into this. So yeah, you know, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You know, let me know if you're an AMD shareholder and what price target you have. And, you know, what are your thoughts on the company and what other semis do you see in the space? All right, so I hope you guys liked the video, and hope you guys got some value of that and you're able to, you know, kind of weigh out some more opinions of what's going on. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.